What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this video for the First Descendant today, we're looking at a fan favorite tactical rifle called Secret Garden. Now when you're building this weapon, there's essentially sort of two directions that you can go in. Of course, it by itself is a very effective weapon at dealing damage, whether you're using it in a mobbing or a bossing way, and that's because it just has really good stats and you can make it deal quite a bit of damage. But the other thing that Secret Garden is also used for is a stat stick specifically for Freyna, and we're going to be looking at that as well. Now first things first, before we actually get into the detail here, let's just go ahead and have a look at our unique effect on the weapon itself. So essentially you have a perk called Gardener, and this says that when you use a dimension skill, it recovers custom resource with a set chance. When using a tech skill, it grants the unique ability Pest Control with a set chance. So these two different effects do something completely different depending on which skills you use to proc it. But if you use a dimension skill, essentially you have a trigger rate of 39% chance to get 10% of your custom resource back. Now custom resources like, for example, Ajax, Bunny, they all have custom resources which power their abilities, and so this is a way for you to get a little bit of that resource back. Now little bit is the operative word here because 10% really is not all that great. But where Secret Garden really shines in terms of a unique ability aspect is Pest Control. Pest Control is a damage boosting ability that the weapon allows you to have as long as you are using tech abilities. This says that it has a trigger rate of 50% and it has a duration of 10 seconds, which can actually stack 3 times. Now this increases your firearm attack, your skill power, and then obviously every additional stack that you have adds more on top of it. So this is any descendant who uses tech abilities' dream weapon, because you can essentially juice up both your firearm as well as your skill power by just using your tech abilities. So for example, I like using this on Ajax, right? Now onto the build itself. This is just if you want to use this weapon just as a gun. So you just want it to deal decent damage and you want to use it to mob and kill the occasional yellow bar boss. Make no mistake, you can actually also use this against some of the more bossy bosses like void intercept bosses, but definitely there's better ways and better guns that allow you to get more damage out. But again, Secret Garden is no slouch. So as a main weapons platform for your descendant, there's literally nothing wrong with that. It deals a decent amount of damage no matter what you put it to task to do. So first things first, if we just want to go ahead and look at the base stats before we start slapping any kind of mods and stuff on it. One of the reasons why Secret Garden is so sexy is because of its base starting stats where you build from. It has a firearm critical hit rate of 50% straight out the fucking bag without you doing anything to it, and then a 2.25 times multiplier, which is really strong. If ever there has been an argument to build a weapon crit, then Secret Garden for sure is the one that wants you to do that. So we're going to go ahead and start again with the standard 3 mods that we put pretty much on every single weapon. So we're going to go action and reaction, and we're going to go rifling, and that is going to give us 2 very strong starts in terms of our firearm attack. Of course, just introducing a little bit of additional recoil with action and reaction. Now instead of taking the usual fire rate, right, which is the blue mod, it's this one over here. Sorry, my typing is below par today. Is this one here. You'll notice that this has 25% increase to fire rate, but because we are so heavily focusing on crit rate and crit hit damage, I feel like I rather want to use something like fire rate concentration. Now this is 5% slower than fire rate up at 20% instead of 25%, but it gives you another 5% to critical hit damage, right? So when we put this bad boy in there, we're going to be increasing 2 stats. So yes, we're not as fast as we would be with fire rate up, but we are getting a little bit of additional critical hit rate damage, which is fantastic. Then next, we're going to take our blue mods, which affect our critical hit rate and our critical hit damage. So Better Insight is the first one, giving us a whopping 37% to critical hit rate. And then we're also going to take Better Concentration, and that gives us 48% additional critical hit damage. Now it's starting to stack up in a very disgusting way, where we have almost 70% critical hit rate and we have almost a 3.5 times multiplier. But we're not done yet. Then we can also put in a mod called Insight Focus. Insight Focus gives us both critical hit rate and critical hit damage. Boom, right there. And now we're starting to inch towards, I would imagine, what the max damage that we're going to be able to juice out of this would be. Now, we did forget one thing though, and that is, let's go ahead and give ourselves some additional bullets in the magazine as well. By default, the gun is no slouch. It has 48 in the mag, but we can go ahead and increase that all the way up to 71, which means more bullets, more crits, more deaths, just good stuff. There's another mod that we can throw in called Focus Fire, which gives us a more firearm critical hit damage, and it's actually also just going to give us a small amount of weak point damage as well. Now, weak point, by the way, we haven't spoken about, but it's also not terrible on this gun. I mean, it's not great. It's not comparable to the crit hit rate and the crit hit damage, but it's decent at 1.5 times, and adding a little bit into that, plus the additional that we're getting from the critical hit damage, is okay. Then one last big push that we're going to make into critical hit damage is going to be concentration priority. But I do understand that this mod is not for everyone, because it does unfortunately also give you a reload penalty. Right, so it increases the time that you need to reload the gun. It's not terrible. It clocks in at 2 seconds, and you can reload cancel as well to obviously make that easier for yourself. But the net effect of putting this in is just too good not to, because now we're standing very, very close to a 4.7 times multiplier on a 75% chance to crit, which is unheard of. Now, in terms of the gold mod, right? For me here, it's kind of like, I would say, I don't think it's entirely open to, you can take anything, but I certainly think there's some room to maneuver here, and I would see this as a flex slot. Like, I think you can kind of like take what you think is good for you depending on what you want to use this for, but also depending on which Descendant you're playing. And I'll explain why that matters. So I, for example, on this weapon, like using Sweeping Squad if I'm using it to mob, because Sweeping Squad is perfectly suited for a situation where you mob, because you're killing enemies. When you kill those enemies, you increase your firearm attack, and it stacks 3 times. So if you keep this up the entire time, as you do when you mob, you're going to have a nice 30% increase to your firearm attack, which is no, laughing matter. Now, let's say, for example, you want to do the same thing that I've built here now, but you want it to be flavored to Freyna. Then you simply just swap this Sweeping Squad for something like Toxic Conductor. Now, Toxic Conductor is 26%, but it doesn't have that fall off, right? So the point is that, yes, you are arguably getting a little bit more juice out of Sweeping Squad, but in the case of Sweeping Squad, right, it can fall off as there's less enemies and as you don't keep the stacks up. However, if you're using Toxic Conductor, the point is you're flowing your toxic abilities of Freyna in any case. You're making stuff, toxic. And so as soon as you are shooting something that is poisoned, you're getting this without having to worry about, keeping buffs up and that sort of thing. As long as the thing's poisoned, you deal damage against it. And of course, this also means that when you're using it against bosses and stuff like that, it means that you're also getting that without having to shoot ads and stuff like that to stack the Sweeping Squad up. Nonetheless, I think both of, and I mean, you'll notice that all the other mods are the same. So this, I would say, would be my setup if I'm using Secret Garden for any other Descendant, and this would be mine for Freyna. Now, I do also feel like I have to mention the fact that if you're playing Freyna and you're playing like mobbing Freyna, then I don't really see a situation where there's anything for you to shoot, because you're killing everything with your abilities. But yes, in the case of something making it through that onslaught of poison that you're putting on top of them, then yes, Toxic Conductor will give you that little bit of extra oomph against whatever's got that poison on it but does not want to die. Next up, we get to the part of the video that I think a lot of people actually want, and that is, what if you want to use Secret Garden as a stat stick? Now, most often you will use this in conjunction with Freyna, and more specifically, you will use it in conjunction with Freyna's 4th ability called Venom Baptism. So the thing about stat sticks that you have to understand, and that I've come to realize is maybe something that people either don't know or struggle with, is the fact that there's very little of your weapon which actually transfers onto Venom Baptism. Now, you can compare this effect with what we see with Lepic, but I'm gonna just keep it very simple. I'm not gonna, because there are some differences with Lepic as well, but the point is we're gonna keep Freyna in the picture here, and we're gonna talk specifically about using this with her and how it pertains to her. Now, the fact of the matter is this: in terms of the gun, the weapon that you use, before you engage Venom Baptism, before you hit her fourth ability, technically speaking, the only thing that matters is fire rate, magazine size, and that you are matched with your reactor. That is going to produce the best damage that you can get, okay? And if that doesn't make sense to you, hold on, I'll explain. But the point is this, okay? Technically speaking, any weapon can be used for her fourth ability, and all of them perform relatively equally the same as long as you consider fire rate, magazine size, and that you're using the right matched weapon, because the point is her fourth ability is also dependent on your skill power. So if you are using a weapon that your reactor is not matched to, you're losing out on a huge amount of additional damage. So it is important that whichever weapon you are using right before you swap into Venom Baptism is the weapon that is actually matched to your reactor. So super important there. Now, when it comes to the actual stat stick part of it, this right here is all you need. Now, if you know a little bit about mods and stuff like that in the game, then the first thing that'll jump out at you is, hold on, dude, you're using sharp precision shot, okay, on a tactical rifle, which doesn't work because the burst firing on a tactical rifle does not engage sharp precision shot, and you never get that ultimate benefit there. That is 100% true. But that's not the case for when you use it and then like transform into Venom Baptism. Then it actually works, because Venom Baptism is an automatic rifle and that will actually engage sharp precision shot. Don't take my word for it, test it, you'll see it actually works. So this is the standard stat stick setup, all right, for Freyna. And basically what we have here is we have fire rate, which is the maximum fire rate we can get, 25%. We don't take another mod because none of the other stats will transfer. Critical hit rate won't transfer, critical hit damage won't transfer, only the fire rate transfers. The next thing that transfers is magazine size. But again here, you might be thinking, wait, but that automatically means light machine guns are better, right? Because they have massive mags. I need to use Enduring Legacy because Enduring Legacy has a massive fucking mag, which means I'll have thousands of bullets for Venom Baptism. Not true. What it does is it doesn't take the guns magazine, it takes the mods magazines. And the best configuration for maximum rounds that you can get is the standard blue one, which is 49% additional rounds per magazine, and then compulsive magazine, which is 39% additional. Now those two together give you the maximum amount of bullets that you can have in the magazine. You don't care about the weak point damage minus 10% because guess what? That doesn't transfer. And then last but not least, sharp precision shot, which you guys should know by now, reduces your fire rate at the beginning, but then as long as you hold your trigger in, which you should be doing with Venom Baptism in any case, you will get the additional effects here. The gun will ramp up and you will murder everything. Now, using this setup is going to give you 84 bullets in your magazine, which is just enough bullets for the amount of time that Venom Baptism runs. So you should be able to run the magazine dry in the same amount of time that your 4 ability is up, and you should be able to kill the enemy. Now, let's say, for example, and I got this question in other videos, which is why I'm going to cover this now. Let's say, for example, you want to use a different weapon. You want to use Enduring Legacy. Fuck Secret Garden, right? So you can do that. Same thing. Use the same mods and you're there. Technically speaking, if you want to be the most min-maxed sexy motherfucker on the block, then what you should be using is Perforator for her. And that's because there's a small difference that inches Perforator, or rather impact rounds weapons, ahead of the rest of the pack. Let me explain. So if you look at sharp precision shot on Secret Garden, you'll notice it says fire rate minus 20%. When you pull the trigger, fire rate plus 4, recoil minus 5, and firearm attack plus 6 every 0.5 seconds. So every 0.5 seconds, it stacks up. Okay, so let's look at the mod under Perforator. Perforator, or impact rounds weapons, is the only one where this mod is slightly better. And when I say slightly, it's super slightly. But if you're one of those people that wants to get to the tippy top of damage and want to min-max the shit out of everything, then this is the way. So this has the same thing except for one little difference at the back end of the mod, which says every 0.4 seconds. So you are stacking up faster. So that's why, if you do see people running around with Perforator, you might be thinking they're psychotic. They're not. It's because it is actually better and it does stack up faster. And lastly, before I let you go, let's actually just talk substats. Now, I would say I don't have the best role here. I think specifically for using this weapon to kill void intercept bosses, I think what you want is something more like what I have on my enduring legacy, which is firearm critical hit damage, critical hit rate, firearm attack versus classes, and firearm attack. So if I had that on my Secret Garden, I would be doing the fucking jig right now. But I do have firearm critical hit damage, firearm critical hit rate, firearm attack, and weak point damage. So in my case, I would have wanted that weak point damage to be additional damage against Colossus. But it is what it is, and that's also fine. Nonetheless, you've been seeing in the background the footage. This thing absolutely does still lay waste to pretty much anything that you pointed at. And it's a fantastic, fantastic weapon to just melt health bars completely. That's going to be it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. Go ahead and keep those comments coming. The support for the last 2 videos has been phenomenal. I cannot thank you enough. Let me know which other weapons you're looking for. I'm also doing some character build guides later on in the week. Plus, I have a bunch of other videos cooking. But if there's anything that I'm not thinking of, anything that you want bumped to the top, you got to let me know. Other than that, fucking cheers.